and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. In order to structure the political funding better and to bring transparency, the Modi government made several provisions in the union budget of this fiscal year. An unprecedented announcement was made introducing electoral bonds, for which the government is gearing up to amend the rules of the Reserve Bank of India. The proposal has found favour generally, but the plan is seen as yet another attempt by the government to step on the turf of the Reserve Bank of India. The electoral bonds, which will be issued by notified banks, can be redeemed by recognised political parties within a prescribed time limit. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will discuss if electoral bonds can reduce corruption. Joining me on the program today are Vikas Singh, former Additional Solicitor General of India, Noor Mohammed, former Deputy Election Commissioner, A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director of the Business Standard, and we'll also be joined on the phone line by Professor Trilochan Shastri, founding member of the ADR. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Singh, I'd like to start with you, of course. Do you believe that electoral bonds can reduce corruption?
Well, electoral bonds are more to do with eliminating black money. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
More to do with eliminating black money in the system and less to do with electoral reforms. I think the bigger step which the Modi government has already taken in the budget is that it has prescribed that a political party cannot take in cash more than rupees 2,000 rupees from a particular donor. That will really go a long way in ensuring more of electoral reforms than this. This is just a means by which an industrial house, if it wants to pay to a political party, it can do so firstly by check and secondly by not getting its identity disclosed. Although the fine print of these bonds have not yet been decided, but these appear to be a method by which, while investing in these bonds, you use tax-paid money, you pay by check, and in doing so you get some tax exemption as well. And these bonds are tradable, so you can, supposing if you buy bonds worth 20 lakhs, you can decide to give 10 lakhs to Congress party and 5 lakhs to BJP if you so desire, and another 5 lakhs to some other party. And each party can, use those bonds by encashing it from these nominated banks and use it for their election purposes. So basically it will be bringing in the black money will be, black economy will be sort of made white by this method. Electoral reforms, of course, more so because of the decrease in the cash limit. That is huge, because parties could, keep on collecting 18,000, 19,000 from people and collect crores and crores of rupees by showing these cash deposits. Now with the limit being brought to 1/10 to 2,000, it will become very difficult for parties to, amass big amounts of money, showing it to be cash donations. So I think that's a much bigger step than these electoral bonds for the purpose of curbing black money in politics.
Mr. Noor Mohammed, I'd like to bring you into the debate. Do you believe that, the electoral bonds can improve the entire election process and bring about some transparency?
Electoral bonds are going to be a kind of currency, isn't it? Which, as you said in the beginning, that it is basically encroaching upon the rights of the RBI to issue currencies. Number one. Number two, if you have electoral bond, now nobody stops you from giving cash to the political parties, which they will not keep in the account. Maybe even today the amount of money shown as donations may be much less than the amount of money being really given to the political parties. So to that extent, of course, it has got a limited value. But of course, since these bonds will be given in form of basically through KYC, they will be coming through the system. So to that extent, as Mr. Singh said, the black money to that extent can be reduced. I fully agree with that. But as far as corruption is concerned, I think I don't think there is much of an impact on that, because then you can give in cash, and political parties need to spend a lot of money in cash, and I don't think that will make so much of a difference. The 2,000 reduction to 2,000 limit, of course, will make things difficult for them, because earlier the 20,000 below, it just have 5 people and you can have 1 lakh. Now you have to have 50 people to do that. So that, of course, it will make the job difficult.
But in a country like India, where we have 125 crore people, Do you still believe that they won't find ways to bring in this money?
Yeah, I mean, that of course is not impossible. But at least they can make things difficult for them. In this budget, actually, it's something very good that the finance minister has accepted that there are certain things going very wrong. He says 70 years after independence, the country has not been able to give a transparent political finance system. He accepts it. He also accepts the earlier system, the amendment made in RB, Representation of People's Act, Company Act, the Income Tax Act, actually has made difference, but not completely eliminated things in the way it should be done.
Sure.
To my mind, if really you want to reduce corruption, it's complete do away with the political funding, have government funding. In about 60% of the countries of the world, the public funding is there, and they are doing pretty well.
Sure. Okay, fair enough. Mr. Bhattacharya, let's first understand what these electoral bonds are. Let's talk about what we know thus far. You know, people are saying, or reports are saying that there'll be bearer bonds, and, you know, designated or authorized banks can give them out. What else do we know?
Well, as of now, what we know is that the RBI Act will have to be amended, because right now under the laws, is only the RBI which can issue these bonds. Now, RBI Act is being amended so that other banks, particularly the State Bank of India, can actually also issue these bonds. So therefore, the first thing that we know is that these will be bonds that will be issued by banks designated by the RBI under the amended Act. Number two that we know from the Finance Minister's statement is this: that these will have a short duration bond, which means they have to be encashed within a period of 30 days, as the Finance Minister has suggested in an interview on the national television. So it will be 30 days, it may be 45 days, so within which period they will have to be encashed. And number three that we know is this, that it is a scheme that is left to the discretion and volition of political parties and the companies or any individuals, which means that, and that is the point where I will bring in my views on it, which is that it is a fancy scheme, but it doesn't really tackle the real problem of political funding and misuse of money and corruption and black money. It is only gives you a big idea that, oh, I have got electoral bonds, but there is nothing in the system by which a company will be encouraged to buy those bonds by payment of check, and then nothing in the system by which a political party will be encouraged to take those bonds. The use of cash, use of undisclosed income and wealth and assets for political funding through the political parties can continue unabated, because there is nothing that stops this system. So in my view, both the schemes, even 2,000 rupees is a half-hearted attempt, because there is nothing in the books. You shouldn't have eliminated it. Just because the Election Commission has recommended that it should be 2,000, the government just simply accepted it. I don't think government fully applied its mind to whether in a country where is a poor country. Now, how many people will give 2,000 and below donation, below cash? If the entire move is toward digitization of the Indian economy, then why even 2,000 rupees should be in cash, and why not no money to be a political party to be in cash? That's number one. Number two.
But before you continue with your point, can I say that then this merely looks like an eyewash, or is it too strong a word to use?
It is not an eyewash. It doesn't move that far to tackle the question of illicit money getting into political funding.
Sure.
So if let us say take the question of electoral bonds. Now, if you are wanting to tackle the use of black money or corrupt illicit money for election funding, a simpler and a probably more effective way would have been, in my view, is to make sure that all political parties, their accounts and all their transactions come above board under a piece of legislation. Now, you can easily mandate that. Now, right now, there are political parties that don't even file their return every year, and all that you come to know is 600 and 700 crore of money that is being used for this thing. And it is impossible to believe that the national parties will have such small accounts of business. So therefore, and finally, I would say that my colleague on this panel has suggested that government funding is the way out. In my view, in a country like of our size, government funding will be opening a Pandora's box, which will have many other problems in managing it, government resources, everything.
Sure.
We can discuss it later.
Indeed, we will discuss it in detail in just a bit, but let me bring in Professor Trilochan Shastri into the debate as well, founding member, Association for Democratic Reforms. Professor Shastri, you know, as far as these electoral bonds itself are concerned, you know, this is the first time any country in the world will be doing something like this, something of this magnitude. Do you believe that the government should have waited, maybe consulted before taking this step?
I don't think this is going to stop black money at all, because the source of black money is not being given through checks or through bonds. It doesn't even appear on the books. As the previous speaker said, you know, a previous senior politician in Maharashtra said he spent 8 crores for the election, but he declared less than 40 lakhs, which is the official limit for expenses. So obviously 20 times the amount that is declared is actually being spent without any trace of where that money is coming from. It does not even reflect in the income tax returns of the political parties. So if the intention is to get rid of black money, the political parties have to clean up their own house, and number two, there has to be stiff penalties. And the best penalty for a political party is that such and such a candidate will be debarred from election, and if by chance he is elected, his election will be set aside because there is strong evidence that a lot of black money was spent. That is the best way to do it. And I think our intelligence bureau, police, even the general public know where the black money is. We have to just go and catch it. Instead of that, we are doing something which is good headlines for the media, but it's not really attacking the problem.
All right, your point taken. Mr. Singh, I want to come back to you now to a point that Mr. Bhattacharya was making about how the RBI Act needs to be amended so as to ensure that this particular electoral bonds comes into being. Now, for electoral bonds or bearer bonds can only be given by the government and the RBI for the time being. So if authorized banks need to give them, the RBI Act has to be amended. Does that mean that we are diluting the RBI?
No, this is not diluting the RBI, because ultimately whenever a policy decision of this kind is taken, then it is a legislative mandate, and RBI is just an instrument which is to carry out the legislative mandate. So the mandate which the legislature gives to the RBI is determined always by the parliament. So if the parliament decides to bring in a law and to say that we want to introduce a particular bond for a particular purpose by amending the law, then that is the law which the RBI is supposed to, sort of regulate. So it's not, can't be said that, and secondly, I don't agree with the other panelists that this is not going to curb. This will definitely have an impact, but it will not have a total impact, in the sense that, like for instance, a businessman or industrial house. Today, the only way to pay is by cash, because that's the only way, otherwise he gets exposed. So if he want to pay in the form of a bond, he need not generate cash, which he is otherwise doing in his business, because he feels the needs to patronize these political parties. So because the overall attempt of the government is to bring in more cashless transaction and to bring more digitization.
I'm just going to ask you to hold on for a moment, because Mr. Bhattacharya is countering what you're saying. Mr. Bhattacharya.
Well, you know, my sense is that right now a corporate or a company can make donations by check even now directly. Nothing stops him from giving a check payment.
No.
Nothing stops him from using a trust, which many companies have actually created trust. That has also been allowed. So to believe that right now the only way the companies can give money to the political parties through cash is probably a flawed thinking.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Singh.
No, you didn't understand. You didn't understand what I said. You can pay by check, but in making the payment by check, you are exposed that you are supporting such and such party. If you were to do the bond process, electoral bond process, then your identity gets completely, sort of concealed, and nobody knows which political party, although you have used the banking channel, although you use tax-paid money, but whom that money has gone to, that identity completely gets blanked out. In the present check payment process, your identity is totally disclosed. So supposing you support a, say, Congress government, a Congress party when the election is there, and the Congress ultimately loses, then you are at the risk of, being at the mercy of the next government, which may be a different political party, and may victimize you. So the purpose of this bond is to ensure that even if you are wanting to use tax-paid money, your identity will be completely masked and your identity will not be known to anybody.
Sure.
When even the political party, if it wants to, the bank will not tell them, because this will be a bond which can just be traded at the bank. So the whole purpose is that if you were wanting to generate black money only because you didn't want your identity to be disclosed, this is a method by which you can use your tax-paid money and get some tax relief also in the process, and at the same time not disclose your identity. So to that extent, it's definitely a step in the right direction. But as somebody else pointed out, the real question is that you should have more chartered accountants with the election commission, you should have more cost accounts, and you should have more tax people at the time when an election takes place, so that a more critical analysis is done of every political party of the election spending. Because I'm sure in this country, if somebody were to do its job properly, you can easily identify what kind of money has been spent by a candidate. And if you are able to do that,
point taken. I'm going to get Mr. Noor Mohammed to respond to what you're saying, because he wants to come in.
Exposing the candidate
Mr. Singh, you've had your say.
And also he will be disqualified because that is...
Sure. Okay. Mr. Noor Mohammed, you do not agree with what Mr. Singh is saying. I can see you shaking your head.
I have reservations about the identity aspect of it, because even if you give by check, it is the information is with the bank. In this particular case also, there will be one bank issuing it, another bank accepting it. So the ruling party, whichever comes, you can always find out whether which party has lost, or who has paid how much. So I think this identity issue is not so clear. I don't think it is impossible to detect the identity of the person. So there definitely I disagree. About the public funding, as Mr. Bhattacharya had some reservations about it. My point is, it need not be completely government funding. You can have a trust, national trust, in which everybody puts in money. And election commission, on the basis of their performance in the last elections, maybe 10 rupees per vote or got or something, on the basis of that they can calculate and distribute it to political parties. So it is doable, it is not impossible, but of course it needs a political will.
You know, my main reservation against any funding of that nature is that it is a past performance based principle, which I think throttles the ideas of new political parties, new political thoughts. In a sense, in a situation of, let us say, in 2014, now before Aam Aadmi Party was born, I am not a proponent of Aam Aadmi Party, but I am giving you as an example, which means that in 2014, Aam Aadmi Party, which was just born, would have no claim to that fund because it is a new party, it has got no track record.
That's very valid.
So how do you decide that X party, Congress will get so much, BJP will get so much, and a new party will get so much? So there has to be some criteria. So my sense is, this funding idea is a great idea, but I don't know whether we have got the formula and the principles in place which doesn't discourage or doesn't bias new ideas, new parties from the field.
Like Mexico and all, they follow it. The new parties, there can be, we can always provide for these kind of new things, innovations. But in general, major parties fighting elections are very well known. They are generally the old ones. New ones, one can definitely take care of that by a proviso. So and that will in fact ensure that whosoever is performing, he gets the money refunded in a way, because whatever you spend, ultimately you get the money refunded on some pro rata basis.
Sure.
What is happening today? The not recognized party, registered but not recognized parties, basically they are becoming the conduit for transferring, for taking money in these ways. Maybe.
No, I'll just come to what we can do in my last segment, but before that, let me bring in Professor Shastri into the picture once again. Professor Shastri, what are some of the best practices that we can follow here in India, maybe so as to ensure that we improve the whole electoral process?
Put people with black money in jail. It's not very difficult to do so, whether they are from within the political system or not. That will send a signal that we are serious about black money. Because most of the money which is spent in the elections is not even declared. And I don't think we are even attacking that problem. So we need to put penalties on people who are indulging in corrupt practices. The other thing is, people are holding huge rallies with thousands and lakhs of people, Gadi, Ghoda, Bangla, so many things. It's very easy to make an estimate how much of money was spent. Number two, people are distributing money, liquor, gifts, daru, murga, all sorts of things in the elections. It is being openly done. It is a criminal offence under the Representation of People Act. So people who indulge in this kind of bribery should be debarred from elections. It's very easy to do that. And so one of the other speakers said that we should, chartered accountants and all are wonderful people, I respect them, but there is an election observer in every constituency. He or she should go out and check what those practices are and report to the Election Commission, and strict action should be taken for these. The first corrupt practice in the Representation of People Act is bribing of voters. We've got to stop that. That is rampantly happening. So we are not really serious about preventing malpractices, corruption, black money during elections. I don't think all these bonds are going to make much difference.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about the way forward now. Mr. Singh, what do we do so as to ensure, like I was asking Professor Shastri as well, to ensure that the election process is, is streamlined, is more transparent, and ensure that voting itself takes place as we want it to?
Well, if you see the Representation of People Act, even spending beyond the specified limit is also a corrupt practice. And a corrupt practice entails not only that you lose that particular election and your election is held to be null and void if you are supposing elected, you are also debarred from contesting for 6 years. Now what happens is the practice is that in the present scenario, firstly there is a not good audit of what actual expenditure you are making. So very few cases are actually made out of somebody having spent more than the limit, whereas everybody knows that every parliamentary constituency or every assembly constituency, the expenditure is in the range of 10 times of what is the nominal limit, sometimes even more. So that is the one aspect where the Election Commission needs to tighten up, and they have their powers under the Constitution are plenary, so they can involve anybody to find out the actual money spent in the election. That is number one. Number two, when a case for corrupt practice is made out, invariably the case goes on for years together, and that tenure gets over, and virtually it becomes infructuous by the time the case gets decided. So that should all be done on fast track, and there should be dedicated courts in every high court to look at these cases wherever an allegation of corrupt practice is made out. If that is done, and if an election is declared within a year or so of the election as bad, then that will be very, very salutary, and people will know that this is just not an empty formality of filing a declaration of what you've spent, but that declaration will also declare your election to be invalid. I think if these two things are done, this will go a long way in cleansing the electoral process to a large extent.
Indeed. All right. Mr. Nur Mohammed, would you agree with the points raised by him? Do you believe that the current machinery that the Election Commission has at its disposal, can it conduct free and fair polling and corruption-free polling with the present machinery, or do you believe that something more?
Very impartially, because Election Commission at present employs expenditure observers who are senior revenue service officers. They know exactly how to calculate costs. And there are assistant expenditure observers who assist them and create a shadow register in addition to the records filed by the candidates. So they try to contrast the two and find out if there are any incongruities in that. But now tell me, in a particular case, for instance, years back, one candidate who hoped that he will be a candidate, he would go to a village, call the ladies under a peepal tree, give them saris, and ask them for blessings, and when the election comes, he doesn't do anything. He just calls them and say, look, I've got your blessings, you have already promised me to give you blessings, thank you very much, vote for me. Now, how to calculate that in this election expenses? It is very difficult to calculate all the expenses, even if you have all electronic sort of transaction in your electoral thing. This is number one. Number two, basically, if you have to be very fair to politicians also. If they have to fight elections, that means a lot of cost. So you have to find out ways how to reduce cost in electoral campaigns. Now, like for instance, one person comes, pandal is made, everything is made, and then he spends thousands of lakhs of rupees, and meeting goes for half an hour, 1 hour, and it is over. They dismantle everything. Why can't we have a general places for meeting? So that if one party A comes, does the meeting, party B comes, does the meeting, and actually that way that will reduce the cost of the entire arrangement of the public meetings. This is number one. Number two, today we have media. Why not, like US and other places, most of the campaign is done in media. Why can't we encourage the campaigns through media? And thirdly, of course, ethical voting. People have to think, if they have to sell their votes, they are going to get the type of government they deserve.
Sure. Professor Shastri, your closing comments on the program, please.
I completely endorse the recommendations of the previous two speakers. I think there's nothing much to add. If we can get voters not to vote for such people, and if we can take strict action against those who are overspending in elections, I think the problem will be sorted out. I have one request for the Election Commission though. They carry out voter awareness campaigns where they say, please register and go out and vote. I think we need to carry out continuous campaigns that accepting and taking bribes for votes is a criminal offense. If you find such activities going on, please report it to the Election Commission. You know, they have all these hoardings all over. Big celebrities are asking people to vote. They should add this message. And I think that will have a salutary effect after a couple of rounds. And people will sort of realize this.
Indeed, all right.
Not a healthy practice.
Sure. And Mr. Bhattacharya, your closing remarks on the program.
I will reiterate my point that stop all cash donations to be received by political parties. Number two, that the political parties must be made compulsory for all political parties to file their returns to the Election Commission every year, and parties that do not do so should be disqualified. And number three, a time has come where a more reasonable and more mature, keeping in mind the inflation rate, the election expenses probably is a limit, should be reviewed.
Indeed. All right. On that note, we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Vikas Singh, Noor Mohammed, A.K. Bhattacharya, Tiroshan Shastri, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. See you again next time.